Good morning and welcome back to Real Estate Live. This is day 5 of our week-long journey around the UK, bringing together the real estate industry to talk about collaboration, to talk about the future of real estate, to talk about the impact of COVID-19. And it's been a great week. We've been all places this week discussing all manner of subjects, and it's been a fantastic week, as I say, of collaboration, and many of you will have been on that journey with us. Today we have 3 fantastic sessions, and we're kicking off this morning with a visit up to Scotland, and then later on we'll be going to Waltham Forest, ending up in Kingston in London. So first of all, today's session is brought to you by the Scottish Development Agency, and we're really grateful that they're bringing this session to Real Estate Live this week. I'm going to introduce Richard, who's our chair, in just a few moments. But first of all, we want you to talk to us this morning. This morning is your opportunity to talk to our panel about your thoughts. And you can do that in a number of ways. So we do really want lots of interaction from those of you that are watching. And just to get you up and running, we're going to start this morning by asking you to take a few seconds to fill in our poll, which will be coming up on your screen. It's asking you, what is the most important factor, in your opinion, in kickstarting development across the UK? So if you could just take a few moments to tell us what your view is on that, and we'll be collating those results from across the week. Also this morning, you can talk to us by putting your questions to the panel, and you can do that by using the Q&A button, which is in your control bar. Please use that section for Q&A. There is also a chat function. We'd love you to chat to us, but ideally, just keep the chat in the chat and put your questions into the Q&A. That way we can put them more easily directly to the panel. You can also wave at us if you want to come into the conversation, and Richard, who is chairing today's panel, may well invite you in to do that. So this morning, without further ado, I'm going to invite Richard Betts to lead us in this conversation this morning. Richard, over to you.
Good morning. Thanks very much, Catherine, for that. Yes, my name is Richard Betts. I'm a co-founder at Real Asset Media, and we run a series of events, rather like these, but for international audiences. So we're often covering cross sectors of real estate, but also looking at key themes. I'm so delighted here to be looking particularly at the Scottish market, but also picking up on some of those themes around winning cities, and also the impact of these kind of innovation-led projects, just in terms of how that impacts the economics as well. Super panel here. We've got Kat Feldinger, who's Head of Capital Investment for the Scottish Government, Anna Stamp, who's the Interim Project Director at Edinburgh BioQuarter, which is a very interesting project, and Alistair Morrison, who's Head of Regeneration at Renfrewshire Council. Hi there, Alistair, which is part of AMIDS, the Advanced Manufacturing District. Let's just do quick introductions, just so that everybody kind of gets a sense of what you're doing in your day job. Let's start with you, Kat. Just give a very brief introduction of yourself and your role, and then I'll come also to you, Anna, and you, Alistair. Kat.
So I'm Head of Investment for the Scottish Government. I am essentially here to create the right conditions for private sector to make investments in Scotland, whether that is large-scale capital or private equity or VC or foreign direct investment.
Great, thanks very much. Anna.
Good morning, I'm Anna Stamp, the Interim Programme Director for Edinburgh BioQuarter. I currently have the privilege of leading the transformation of the BioQuarter on behalf of the 4 Edinburgh BioQuarter partners.
Super, thanks. Alistair.
Good morning, Richard. Good morning, everyone. I am Alistair Morrison. I am currently Head of Regeneration at Renfrewshire Council, which, for those who don't know, is the local authority immediately west of Glasgow City. I've been doing property development in various guises for about the last 27 odd years, England, Scotland, private sector, public sector, and currently responsible for all things economic and economy in the Renfrewshire area.
Super, thanks. Let's maybe start, Kat, with you. I know you've got a brief presentation that you just want to share. So let's pick up on those slides. Let's run through a little bit about some of the sort of key aspects that you see in terms of Scotland from your particular perspective within the government.
Okay, so thank you very much, Richard. So good morning, everyone. It feels a little bit odd, I suppose, to be talking to you about the strengths of an economy from the depths of lockdown, which it still feels like we're in. But we and you are increasingly, I guess, beginning to look at what the other side of that looks like. Within that context, I have the privilege, as I said, of being in charge both of capital investment and foreign direct investment in Scotland. And the neat thing about that is some of the opportunities and the crossovers that allows us to create. And I'm going to use my privilege as first speaker basically to focus on FDI, which is probably not what you were expecting this morning. But the reason I want to do that is just to hone in on the very powerful base for company investment that Scotland already has. So focusing on all of the factors of attraction, so really, really broad environmental conditions around the skills and the talent that we have, around the pricing of some of those skills and talent and property, around the connectivity with the rest of the UK, and around the research base that we have. We also have increasingly a set of principles that we see the companies coming to Scotland sharing around fair work, around reasonable levels of pay, around employee engagement, and actually and valuing the people that work for those companies. We are on the cusp, and we're certainly on the cusp just before COVID, so it won't be far behind of launching a new strategy around foreign direct investment. And the slide that I've got in front of you is focusing on the 9 areas that we see as the big future opportunities for Scotland. Opportunities for Europe, which is great news for us. And has also placed us second only to London within the UK for 7 years running for attracting FDI. It's worth saying that the strategy is not just a case of focusing on which sectors we think are going to be particularly strong for Scotland, although as you can see there's a really strong innovation theme running through all of them. It's also about the way in which we go about delivering that. So just to give you a flavour of that, 2 of the things that we're planning on doing differently. One is a massive digital upskilling. We all know that post-COVID there's going to be a higher level of unemployment than we had before it, certainly. And one of the things that the Scottish Government is looking at whether we can commit to is reskilling, upskilling up to 10,000 people into digital skills that support some of these sectors every year. So that's quite a massive commitment for a country with 5.3 million people in it. And currently with about 10,000 graduates a year in digital skills anyway, so basically doubling that. The other thing that we're looking at, and that I've got a call on later today, is whether we can streamline access for businesses to university-led intellectual property, so that we can, a little bit like Harvard, a little bit like MIT do, make it really, really easy for businesses to come and work with universities in Scotland. So why am I focusing on all of this? If you go to the next slide, please, then what you'll see is that what we have across the central belt of Scotland is a phenomenal concentration. This is taken from a forthcoming Nesta report on looking at where you have got centres of innovation in Scotland across the central belt. And I should stress, it takes less time to get across that than it does to travel into London from one of the suburbs. So there's 45 minutes between the 2 cities now. Within that conglomeration, there are 4 top 200 universities, 70,000 graduates a year, 7 centres of research excellence, a further 11 universities that are not in the top 200, a labour market of 3.5 million. It is basically ready to go. And one of the things that we think is really, really fascinating about that is the way in which the connections across those sectors are being made. So we don't have universities or research centres only specialising in one subsector. Actually, the thing that they're absolutely excellent at is collaborating. So I wanted to focus on this morning, not so much because it's a lovely story to tell, and it is, and from within my job, but actually because these are the things that drive you and your businesses. So essentially, this is a dependable forecast of future demand. What I'm trying to tell you with the way in which we plan to support innovation, the way that we plan to support FDI, is that we're not just trying to get back to where we were pre-COVID. This is genuinely a reconfiguration of the economy around an innovation-led drive and around a skills-led drive. The 2 projects we'll hear from today, BioQuarter and AMIDS, absolutely sit within that. Both have got 100% government commitment and backing going into this. But it's also worth noting that the project promoters that you hear for have really got form in this area. So In Edinburgh, for example, the last collaborative research building, the Bayes Centre, is full and is looking at how they can build another collaborative centre. In Glasgow's last venture, the Centre of Excellence in Personalised Medicine, that's also full and is now looking to expand. So in terms of university-backed and innovation-backed ability to bring in companies, to bring in occupiers for these types of developments, there is absolute pedigree in that. If that base case isn't enough for you, and if you're not convinced that Scotland is the place to innovate and to support that happening, then we can also, in the form of the Scottish Government, put in a whole series of really, really positive business incentives. So we have the UK's most competitive rates package. There is no rates to pay until a new building is first occupied. There is 12-month holiday for new occupiers as well. We are later this year launching the Scottish National Investment Bank. That is a bit of an unusual beast. It's mission-led patient financing to invest into either low carbon or into placemaking or into challenging demography, which these two projects both absolutely fit in those missions. And what that allows us to do is to support incoming investors in thinking about the capital stack and thinking about the right way to finance these projects and get them out the ground. So as I said, the projects here today have absolutely got government backing. That's part of the reason that I'm here talking about them too. But I don't want to steal their thunder. I actually want to hand back to Richard and to the two project promoters and let them and the opportunity to speak for themselves. Richard, back to you.
Great, thanks, Kat. I'm going to drill down a little bit into the sort of two projects in a moment, but I just wanted to pick up a little bit on, first of all, in terms of the government. How do you see these kinds of projects within that concept of a winning city? You know, what are the key drivers, I suppose, for you as a government, and then how are you supporting that in terms of these kinds of innovation-led projects?
So I think we have a really, really strong commitment from the First Minister for Scotland to be the place that invents and makes solutions to global challenges. And I think that is the role that these two cities play, not just individually, but actually collectively. So the span of cross-sectoral talent that sits across the pair of them at the moment, the way that those connections are increasingly being made, we see absolutely as the key to Scotland's future economy. This isn't a case of trying to bring back shipbuilding or this is genuinely looking forward to what comes next. What could Scotland's role in the world be? And I think that's what makes these two developments hugely exciting, is that both of them are spaces where you would expect to see industry and companies and innovation and manufacturing actually come together in a way that helps support that. And I think that's hugely exciting.
Great, and I want to pick up. Maybe let's just pick up with you, Alistair. Just before we drill down into the specifics of each project, what's your sense of the? You know, we've seen a lot with this crisis in terms of sustainability, in terms of green space becoming more important. There's also lots of discussions around, you know, how cities should operate. But what's your sense around that kind of winning cities side, mixed use, the importance of innovation more generally? Obviously, from a council's perspective, you've been very keen to promote these sides. So how does that play into the winning cities, winning regions agenda in terms of attracting talent, especially?
Thanks, Richard. I mean, we see ourselves in Renfrewshire. We're one of 8 local authorities that make up what is currently the Glasgow City region. But we've been working together now for a long period of time across a number of issues, but more recently formalised under the Glasgow City Region City Deal since 2014. And we've been working together on a number of elements, one of which AMIDS actually sprang from. So. But a lot of the talk around that, Richard, has been around innovation and around the labour market, and in terms of where we take this kind of future scenario for Scotland, you know, the links to academia. And there's already been an awful lot of success in that front. I mean, we already have an innovation district in Glasgow City Centre itself, which is pretty well developed around the University of Strathclyde's campus, and another one planned as well for the west end of the city around Glasgow University. and the River Clyde there. So there's a kind of you know, an ecosystem that's already developing there, and a lot of that is fed into the thinking of the city region in terms of where it goes in the future, in terms of the types of jobs it's looking to create, and the kind of programs it's expecting the university, and the role of academia and business in that.
And that's interesting. And Anna, just picking up with you, I mean, the crisis has particularly led to a focus, I think, on healthcare, on innovation, on data, those kinds of things, especially around the real estate side. What's your sense of how these things will now begin to influence a little bit more those strategies around winning cities? I'll just unmute you. Perfect.
Thank you. I think data is a really interesting one, and data has driven decision making in universities for many years, but I think more publicly it's coming to the front. When we listen to the news now and we listen to updates on COVID-19, a lot of the news is actually leading with data, and as the public get more trusting in the data, I think it is going to change the way that we do our research, the way that we think about the research, but also the decision making of politicians, of leaderships, I think is going to be driven by data more and more in the future. I think data is already there. It's a very complicated, it's got a lot of security issues, granted, but certainly at the BioQuarter we have very privileged in the fact that we have a lot of data sets that comes from the hospital that is driving the innovation at BioQuarter, and I think to set Scotland apart, I think data and the data agenda is what will make us different. The Usher Institute, which is going to be home of data-led innovation, is starting on site at the BioQuarter next year, being built by City Deal funding. And again, that will start attracting more and more different type of innovation companies to the BioQuarter. So my personal view is that data really is going to change the way that we do a lot of things in the future.
That's great. Thanks very much for that. And again, if there's anybody who's got questions, please do use the Q&A button. I'll try to bring those in. And also, if you've got a point that you want to bring out, just mention that in the Q&A. And then what I'll try to do is also bring you into the discussion live to ask that question if you want to, or share your comments. But the session is very much for you, so please do share your questions, and I'll make sure that we deal with those during the hour. I just want to pick up as well. I know that in real estate there's a lot of kind of terminology that people use. We're particularly looking here at innovation districts. So how does that differ? People may be thinking that that's also the same as a science park or other areas. So I suppose it would be useful just to get a sense of how you define an innovation district versus these other aspects, whether it's a science park or data park or whatever. What's your sense of an innovation district specifically? Maybe start with you, Alistair.
Thank you, Richard. I mean, I think for us in terms of the, I totally accept things. The two terms could be interchangeable almost and seen as confusing. But I think for us, the difference in the AMIDS innovation district is that we've always seen it as part of a much wider ecosystem. So it's the site itself is the one that we're planning at the moment, and I'll come on to speak about that in a bit more detail. But it's a central element of a much wider ecosystem. So the innovation district itself is much wider and takes in an awful lot of other elements beyond what you might have had in a traditional science park, which might have been, a large area of land with science-based companies attached to a university campus. We're talking about an innovation district here that will stretch and connect wider, not just to residential areas, but to other business areas and to hospitals. The Centre for Stratified Medicine is just up the road from us at AMIDS at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and to the other innovation districts that I mentioned earlier in the west end of the city and the city centre.
Great. Well, let's drill down a bit into each project, because Anna and Alistair, you've both got a short number of slides just to highlight a little bit and give people a better sense, I think, of the projects. So maybe, Anna, let's drill down a little bit more into Edinburgh BioQuarter. Let's share the slides, and maybe just talk us through a little bit about, I suppose, the history of it, where you're at, and also what some of the guiding principles of this are, and maybe also, I suppose, what you're looking for from both private sector and from government, perhaps.
Okay, thanks, Richard. So Edinburgh BioQuarter is, just in case you're not sure of its geography, it sits 3 miles outside the city of Edinburgh city centre, and it's really grown up over the past 20 years. It started off with the planning permission back in 1997 to relocate the city's hospital out to Little France area of Edinburgh. And I suppose it is an out of town centre as opposed to a city centre, and perhaps that's something we need to pick away at in one of the next questions, Richard. It has grown up though as a science park, and because of that, it is an amazing talent pool already there. It has many specialist facilities. But I suppose it does suffer from what science parks potentially do suffer from. It's a site that's dominated currently by cars. There are very little amenities on site. It's very focused on its core business of innovation and research. Poor connectivity across the site, and it's not very pleasant to walk around the site. It's a site that's full of cars, full of car parking. And really, to date, there's been no holistic research. It's very siloed in both its way it's developed and also its leadership pools. So if you go to the next slide, and what we're doing, we have a really transformational and a very exciting vision for the BioQuarter for this next chapter. And our vision is to rapidly grow the BioQuarter into a new, vibrant, mixed-use neighbourhood of Edinburgh that, yes, is centred around a world-leading community of health innovators, but it is very much a mixed-use development with a real focus on place and a place strategy. And I think that is probably the biggest difference, in my opinion, between a science park and an innovation district, is that an innovation district is a lot more focus on the place in terms of facilities, the place in terms of good places to eat, to have coffee, to sit, the green spaces, and the environment, having a nice environment and air quality, and also the proximity and the connectivity, to have a really nice, easy walk around the site, as opposed to ducking cars and buses constantly. So you can see with this slide just as some of the really exciting bits of our vision. We're looking at the heart of BioQuarter. Obviously, BioQuarter exists to accelerate healthcare treatments and diagnosis for us all. And right now, I mean, that's absolutely top of everyone's thoughts. It's also there as an economic growth, both for Scotland, Edinburgh, but also for its local communities in terms of skills, education, and health, and employment and jobs. We want to attract a really buzzing and welcoming environment. We want to have lots of, we want to have shops, we want to have hotels, we want to have nurseries, we want to have gym facilities, and we want to attract the best. We want to attract the best innovators and entrepreneurs to our sites, the best companies, but also we want to retain the talent pool that we have. And if you go to the next slide, you can start to see why we believe that we have all the key ingredients to be a global leading health innovation district. At our heart, we have a world leading university. We have the University of Edinburgh. We have its home of medicine at BioQuarter. We have its research facilities at BioQuarter. and it really dominates the innovation currently and the landscape at the BioQuarter. We of course have the 2 acute NHS hospitals, the Royal Infirmary and the Sick Kids, which when it's opened will again bring a pool of clinicians, patients, and the real bed to bench to bed strategy can really come onto its own. We already have a community of innovators. We have an innovation centre in Building 9, built by Scottish Enterprise. So we have the start of a really good ecosystem, but there's a long way to go with the ecosystem at BioQuarter, and that is a real focus right now for the partners. The critical mass, there is 8,000 people already on the site, plus patients, but we believe that we need to grow that critical mass, and we need to make it a 24/7 critical mass. So the introduction of residential estates is really important. The residential estate for anyone, not just those on site, but what that will bring is people. It will bring also the amenities, so shops and retails and supermarkets can become more sustainable because we have a critical mass of population, but it will also help with the 24/7, the buzz and feel of the place, attracting cafes and restaurants and such. But really one of our USPs is the specialist activities that we have all on one site. We have everything from data to research, to teaching, and you can see with the master plan here, you can see the site that already exists, that has been built over the past 20 years. We have commitment from the 4 partners to continue their development. So the areas in orange here, that's the university's future buildings. So there's a further commitment of circa £300 million from the partners to continue to build their estate out here over the next 10 to 15 years. But one thing that sets us apart from other sites is we have a huge land that's undeveloped, that's under the ownership of Scottish Enterprise, that is really ready to be unlocked and developed. It's almost in its entirety 61 acres of land that's available to be developed, and that's what we're currently in the midst of doing. And you can see again from this slide some of the mixed use that we're targeting for the new area. We're looking at hotels, we're looking at new innovation hubs, public outreach as well to reach the communities and to bring the communities in, potentially wellbeing facilities like GPs and dentists, but also a mass of residential estate and more opportunities for innovation and tenant innovation. So if you go to the next slide, some of the headlines, just to whet your appetite for our proposal. In our phase 1, which we're looking at about a 10-year programme for the first phase, 25 acres of development land. We're looking at about 32,000 square metres of new innovation space. We're estimating about 1,400 new housing units and 1,000 new jobs for the economy. So it's a great place, and we feel that we're really well positioned. We are healthcare and we're economic growth, and I think that's 2 of the big agenda items just now. So finally, where we are, I'm currently in the midst of a master planning exercise, a placemaking strategy, and also a procurement strategy. And our intention is to go out to the market and bring in a private sector partner who will work with the partners and develop the next chapter for the BioQuarter. Our intention is to go out to the market in January of next year. Our PIN notice goes out, in fact, in 2 weeks' time, on the week of the 15th of June. And that will really give an indication to the market of what we're thinking, of the type of services that we're trying to procure. This slide here just gives a really early indication of the types of services we're looking from the private sector to come in. And it's not just about buildings, and it's not just about construction and about development. Key to this is actually a private sector partner who's going to provide innovation support services for the site and really unlock the ecosystem and drive that forward, which is at the heart of BioQuarter, and that's the piece that will really take us and put us on our global platform.
Great, thanks very much, Anna. Very interesting project. I've been to Scotland a number of times and actually visited this site as well. And it will be really interesting just to see how that developed, and great to hear that this is moving forward in terms of the PIN notice and everything. Alistair, maybe coming to you, let's pick up a little bit on AMIDS, and let's have a look at that particular project as well, and then we can then pick up, I suppose, there's some very good questions beginning to come in, and so we can then drill down into those, pick up on some of those as well. But let's first of all just highlight the project a little bit, explain a little bit more about what you're aiming to do with AMIDS, and also just explain a little bit more about I guess your plans for the future.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Richard, and good morning, everyone. I'll start off with geography as well, just in terms of for those who are a little less familiar. I've only got 2 slides, unlike Anna there, who had a few more, but I'll keep it to 2. And obviously, if people want to follow the website link that's at the bottom of the slide bar on the the slide. On each of these, you can find more information in terms of more details of the master plan, and also fly-throughs and other such type material that's been developed for potential investors. So geographically, AMIDS is it's immediately east of Glasgow Airport. In fact, in the slide there that you've got on the screen, you can see the airport runway just on the very right-hand side of the screen, next to the buildings and above the river. We're 6 miles west of Glasgow city centre, and we're immediately adjacent to the M8 motorway. So very, very accessible. The reason AMIDS was chosen here, and I mentioned earlier about how this is one site. So this is the central site, or the newest site within what's become the Innovation District. But it really sits at the heart of a much wider ecosystem that I referred to. The site was selected for a number of reasons, but principally for that one, because it sits at the heart of what is already a very well established advanced manufacturing area, district, zone within West Central Scotland. So if I give you a flavour in terms of, there's around about 10,000 manufacturing jobs within close proximity to the AMIDS site, the likes of Diageo, Thermo Fisher, Terumo Aortic, who are doing some fantastic stuff at the moment, linked to the healthcare pandemic, Peak Scientific, and also the Advanced Forming Research Centre, which is a high value manufacturing catapult centre, which is based just up the road, run by the University of Strathclyde, who in turn will also run one of the new facilities that's going to go on the AMIDS site, which I'll come on to in a second. Kat already mentioned the wider catchment and the strengths that exist across the wider central belt of Scotland in terms of academia and population and graduate skills and such like. So we're hopefully going to tap into an awful lot of that here, given our very accessible location. We want to work essentially with a JV partner. That's where we're at the moment, and I'll come on to a bit more detail of that in the next slide in terms of the timeline, etc. But essentially what we're doing here is we've got a 52-hectare site. It's all in single ownership. It's all owned by the local authority, Renfrewshire Council. It is, we're at a very early stage of the process, essentially. It's, we've got the contractor, or would be, COVID permitting. Obviously the lockdown has led in the Scottish context. I know it's slightly different in England, but in the Scottish context, pretty much all outdoor construction has ceased. So we were on site. In terms of the enabling infrastructure, we're putting in around about £45 million of upfront infrastructure I referred to earlier in terms of the Glasgow City Region City deal. So essentially most of that money for that enabling infrastructure has come through that programme. And this was one of the highest performing sites that was in that programme when it was first developed back in 2014. So there's about 45 million gone into that, and that will essentially consist of putting in all the roads required, bridges, broadband connections, utilities, such like into it. And we're going to have, as part of that utilities, you mentioned sustainability before, Richard, earlier in the conversation, and we're going to be aiming to put a district heating facility into here. We've been trying to get these green credentials right at the heart of everything we've done here in terms of from the outset of this project as the AMIDS concept has come forward. And we've also tried to learn from others. I think that's a key point here. We've been on many visits down to see AMRC at Sheffield, which some people might be familiar with, between Sheffield and Rotherham, and trying to learn from the concept that developed there, which has been very, very successful. We've also been down to Preston to see BAE's facility there, and also down to see things like Airport City at Manchester. So we've developed these links in terms of how to do this right and how to try and learn from others as we go through the process. So in terms of where we are, we've got a committed development investment of £130 million to go into it, and that consists of a number of things, but primarily it's a National Manufacturing Institute, which will be one of a kind in Scotland, and that's at the stage of a contract about to be let for that. That's going to be one of the key elements of the gateway into the site. Again, run by University of Strathclyde. But with huge support from Scottish Government and Scottish Enterprise. So it's been a real partnership approach to that. We've also got planning consent now in place for the entirety of the development. So it's round about, as you can see on the slide there, 150,000 square metres of development. A bit unlike BioQuarter that Anna was referring to there, we've got, even though I've referred to it as a mix of uses, we don't have the anticipation of putting things like hotels or retail or residential of any scale at all onto the AMIDS side. It's going to be purely focused on advanced manufacturing. But what we do want to try and get in terms of getting that innovation district feel, we've planned the development out, and again, you'll see this on the master plan if you go and have a look and follow the web link, around a central square. So we've taken the idea of trying to put in a kind of city square, an urban square, into the heart of the development, right outside the front door of both NMIS and MMIC, which I've referred to on the slide there, and I'll come on to in terms of the Medicines Manufacturing Innovation Centre. So these are the two developments that are already committed to the site. We've planned a new urban square around that, and we've taken that as a central point of a set of principles, which will see active travel, access to the riverfront, and an encouragement of just developing and using the site in a much more collaborative way. We've got an estimated gross development value for the site of round about 300 million, but that's very much an estimate at this stage. And where we are at the moment is that we're very, very close, I think, to where BioQuarter are in terms of their latest part of the development, in that we hope to publish a PIN notice post-COVID, or at least post the lockdown. And as things begin to ease, so probably we're estimating around about the summer, we would have published that notice. Funnily enough, if we'd all been in the sunshine of Cannes this week out in Mippen, which would have been nice, but not to be. So we would have published it to coincide with that. But as it is, it's now going to be more like around about the summertime that will come out. We've got as I said, the enabling infrastructure is under construction. We've got the NMIS development, the National Manufacturing Institute, ready to go. The contract's been let for that by the Scottish Government just last week. We've got Avison Young have been just recently appointed as our commercial property advisors. And what we're essentially looking for is we're looking for a JV partner to come in here who will share some of our objectives. We're at a very early stage, Richard, but we're looking here over the next 10 to 15 years to partner with somebody who will share our objectives, but be patient. We as a local authority are not looking to make commercial return out of that. Our partner, of course, will be, but we are looking to essentially create a development of quality here, but one that will add to the economic growth of the city region and create jobs for local people. That's essentially where we are at the moment.
Great, thanks very much. And I think I'm right in saying that all of those presentations are available to everybody here who's participating. I've seen some links going around, and I've just posted one on the chat as well, so that you can also take a look in more detail. But of course, also do feel free to contact after this Kat, Alistair, or Anna about any of those topics. Just thanks very much to everybody for the Q&A that's coming in. Some really interesting topics. As more questions come in, also feel free to like. That would be great, and then that allows me to make sure that we definitely ask the questions that everybody likes. We'll also post a way of contacting people here, but also feel free to contact everybody on LinkedIn or however you wish to do that, including me, and I'll also direct you if need be to Alistair, Anna and Kat. Just wanted to pick up on some of these questions that are coming in. Interesting one here for you, Anna, especially, which is, given the current climate and underlying profile of Edinburgh BioQuarter, are there any plans to revise the timetable to accelerate delivery of phase 1? Interesting one there.
Absolutely. And if we could go faster, we absolutely would. It's a large site, and we are going through a public procurement exercise which will take its time. We're estimating about a year to do the public procurement, and beyond that, it's really as quick as we can start developing the site. I mean, obviously these large sites come with a lot of infrastructure requirements as well, and BioQuarter has that. So that has to be unlocked ahead of development as well. I think in the meantime, it's not just waiting for the next chapter, if you like. It's what do we do in the meantime? I think that's really important, and the measures that we're putting in place to actually start growing the ecosystem as it is today. So accelerating as best we can the procurement exercise and the build program for the first phase, but realistically we're talking about 2 to 3 years before we start seeing any further meaningful development on the site.
Okay, good. Just also picking up for you, Alistair, question that's come in here is, will COVID and emerging ideas such as the 15-minute city make you think about not having residential on site? I mean, just interesting to see how those things are beginning, those ideas are beginning to develop through, and whether you're rethinking any of the aspects, I suppose, based on I mean, given that this is a large scale, longer term project.
Well, I think we would never rule things out, Richard, necessarily. The actual AMIDS site, as I was referring to there on the first slide, in terms of the central part of it, the difficulty you've got with residential is the proximity to the airport runway, and that's just a fact of the location that's been selected for this particular site. But I mean, if you saw the wider context and like I referred to in terms of going into and seeing the wider master plan, or even just doing it on Google Maps, I mean, you can see that there are residential areas that are in very, very close proximity. I mean, you can walk. I mean, literally, we've calculated that. I mean, you've got the town of Renfrew, which is just across the White Cart River, which will be linked by a new bridge for public transport, walking, cycling, and also by the Bascule Bridge as well. So there's huge communities of people who can walk to this site in literally 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, great. Another one coming. Thanks, Ben, for this. Regarding the BioQuarter proposals, what are the plans around providing sustainable transport between Edinburgh city centre and the BioQuarter? In addition to extending, I don't know why I can't say that, extending the tram system, which is an interesting point actually to BioQuarter, are there plans to enhance cycle routes and pedestrian links with the city? I mean, that's a good point, because I visited the site, and for sure, transport infrastructure in general, I mean, it was highlighted as one of the points I noted on the poll that everybody looked at this morning. Infrastructure, transport links, connectivity between cities is important, especially for these districts. I suppose, what are your plans for that, and are they moving forward, and what's your idea behind that, Anna?
So firstly, one of our partners is the City of Edinburgh Council, which is really important. We sit within an urban area of Edinburgh, and connectivity to the city centre, to the airport, but also to the other sites as well. The university has 5 campuses across Edinburgh, so it's our connectivity is one of our biggest topics that we're addressing. We are moving forward with interim changes, so increased public transport in the short term, working with the council over additional active travel routes in and around the BioQuarter. The one that's coming forward next is the one that's up Old Dalkeith Road, which will make a significant difference. But beyond that, it's working with the City of Edinburgh with regards to their current mobility plans across the city. The Tramline 3 is planned to come up to BioQuarter, and obviously what BioQuarter hopes is that gets pushed forward quickly and will make a significant difference. But it's not just about waiting for tram. It is about looking at how do we reduce cars, how do we bring more public transport, more buses, but the active travel as well. So there's a lot going on with regards to connectivity. It's a big issue, and it's not one that BioQuarter will fix by itself. I mean, this is why it's really important to work as part of a city infrastructure and work with the City of Edinburgh Council to address this in a wider sense.
Okay, good. I'll pick up another couple of questions here as well. There are some related specifically to what you're looking for in delivery partners, and I'll pick those up. But a couple of things that one which I think is interesting, and I'd like to pick up on, and then there's a sort of reverse version of that, which is what do you think are the key success factors for places that seek to accommodate organisations focused on innovation? And how do you compare on those measures with places like Boston, Silicon Valley, London, Cambridge, Oxford, Shenzhen, Munich, and so on? And also I'd put into that as well Eindhoven and places like that. So I mean, it will be interesting just to pick up, and this is a question for anybody, so feel free to come in as you wish on this. I mean, what do you see as the key success factors, and I suppose how have you tried to integrate those into those projects? And you can also pick that up, Kat, from a government point of view in terms of how you see those success factors and how the government is trying to build into its strategies ways of supporting that. A bit of a nightmare question, but shall I start with you, Kat, first?
Always do. Yeah, sure. So I think there's probably at least two. I might invent a third one as I go. I think the first one is around the human dimension. So if you are going to try to build on anything at all that deals in innovation, you really need to make sure that you have the talent strategies in place and that you have the right people who are capable of working at that level, but actually also that want to. So I think there's something about creating that through the network of universities, but also increasingly through the ways in which we seek to encourage collaboration between them, between research centres of excellence. There's a really active network, for example, of health trusts that work with sharing data, that work with sharing innovation. That is nothing to do really with government, but is very, very active in terms of engaging with businesses and wanting to bring them here. There are sort of sectoral councils or sectoral leadership groups that play the same role, again, where they have asked government to come and help sort of organise them, essentially. But other than that, actually is very, very industry driven. And I think that leads nicely on to the second point around this, which is from a building the environment, from a government policy perspective, you have to be absolutely laser focused. So you can see from places like Eindhoven in particular, I guess, but some of the others that I mentioned here as well, it is not possible to build a really strong cluster from nothing, right? You have to have something to start with in the first place. And I think acknowledging where you are in that, where you would like to be, not so much thinking about who your competitors are, but thinking about who else in the rest of the world you would like to work with. And then picking those sectors, picking those strengths that you think are really, really going to work for what you already have, I think is going to be absolutely crucial to building this out properly. And I think both of these propositions do that. You've got one that's very, very focused around healthcare and co-locating with a hospital and life sciences. You've got one that's focused around something which I think is going to be critical for moving into a green future around manufacturing and materials. So both really, really interesting perspectives from hitting that focus.
I mean, that's interesting, and I'm going to come to you, Anna and Alistair, in a minute on that. But that also picks up another point that has come in, which is linked, I think, to this in terms of there's a recognized phenomenon that when you analyze best practice and then try to impose it elsewhere, it not only turns into worse practice, but tends to go even further and destroy the very thing you're trying to promote, wastes tons of money and creates an unnecessary bureaucracy. And there's a link to that around Bristol University. And that's quite interesting. And the point made is, do you think that there's a risk of this in Scotland's plans? But I think that's interesting. If you're taking the perspective of who do we want to work with and, what are the partners we're looking for? Are you taking it from that kind of different position, you would say, which is rather that than trying to find out what best practice is and impose it? Is there a desire to kind of grow these things organically, I suppose, in a certain way?
I think to some extent they already are growing organically. I think we are well past the era of build it and they will come. Which is why I kind of wanted to focus in on the talent and on the strengths. Some of this is about realizing that between developed economies, actually quite often there isn't that much of a difference. So why would people want to come and locate here? And I think creating that culture, the very human culture around how we work together, is more likely to bring us success than looking at precisely the blend of open space to residential. To those all factor in, but for the individual sites. But I think it's much more critical that we create the right culture around.
Okay, good. Alistair, Anna, if you want to pick up any of those points, feel free to now.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I would very much agree with what Kat was saying there, Richard. I mean, I think there's a huge human element to this. I mean, I think a lot of these this not necessarily young talent, but talent of all ages that we're talking about here. I mean, a lot of it is it can be relatively footloose. And in terms of being able to make the most of that, there's a huge reputational element. It's about who they want to work with. It's not just which companies and organizations are located in a certain place. It's also about whether it's the kind of place that they want to work in. And I mean place in its widest sense. There's the physical element to that, which we've concentrated on in AMIDS, and in terms of trying to get right and trying to get the feel of it right and get that kind of human element in terms of active travel and environment and such like. But it's also about being a place with that right reputation that they actually want to be associated with. And that comes to that collaboration piece around academia and business and sectors coming together to bounce off each other and creating that kind of buzz of possibility and opportunity.
Okay, good. There was also a request, Alistair and Anna, to if you want to put your contact details in the chat for everybody, then do. If you can't manage to do that and multitask whilst we're doing this, then I can probably do that for you. But just picking up on that, there's some interesting points that have come in, and I'm just going to deal with this one first, which is what steps did you take at the very start to help identify what the project should be, which sectors to focus on, and to build strategic buy-in, and how long did this take? I mean, I think that's let's not take too long on that, just because I'm aware that time is rapidly disappearing from the session. But I think that would be interesting for people who may be looking at this kind of area and trying to look at these maybe as exemplars. So I suppose let's start with you, Anna, on that. What steps did you take at the very start to help identify what the project should be, and what were the timelines for these things?
So I think, as always with these things, they always happen in parallel, and they're not linear processes. I think there's a huge focus always initially on the built environment, because that's the bit that takes the longest, if you like. When you're dealing with 4 partners as well, each partner organisation has different agendas and different requirements. So really the bit of work that was done at the start of this exercise was to very much bring the partners together, understand what the commonality was, understand what they needed from the BioQuarter. There's no point imposing things on organisations when they don't need them, and then working through a solution for that. So there was a significant amount of work done last year on that, and then developing that now just goes on. Developing what the innovation strategy for the site is. I mean, that's going on in tandem with the built environment and the placemaking strategy, working through the leadership, the governance, and the diversity and inclusion. So there's a lot of parallel work. that will happen and will continue to happen as well with the private sector partner. I mean, we're hoping, certainly in BioQuarter, to bring in a partner who knows innovation districts and knows innovation sites, knows how to grow an ecosystem, and work with the partners with regards to that as well. And again, it's back to understanding what the needs of for example, the NHS. What we need from the NHS is for them to identify where their issues are. You know, where are the gaps in healthcare treatment and diagnostics, and then we bring in a team and try and target fixing of that, as opposed to imposing issues on the likes of the NHS. So there's so I can't see a time. I mean, it's about a year's worth of work and preparation, lots of work going on as we work towards the kind of goal line.
Okay, good. We've got about 4 minutes to go, so I just want to pick up the pace a little bit, but there's a couple of things that I really want to pick up from questions. These are both around delivery partners. So do both projects envisage a single delivery partner being procured, and what risk matching is SG able to offer? And will the procurement process for both projects look to define and measure social value and positive impacts in terms of skills, economic activity and local engagement? So let's pick those up in a minute each, Anna and Alistair.
So very much we're looking for, it's one procurement exercise, and as I said, and I showed in my slides, we're looking for various services to be provided, whether that's a consortium or whether or not that's one company. The market will determine that. What I've determined is what the requirements are, and that will be the procurement exercise, but it will be one procurement exercise and one contract, if that answers that question. One of the key components, though, is how do you bring in the local community? How do you engage, and how do you work with the local community to make sure that these science park and innovation districts are very much seen as part of the wider landscape and not gated communities, as science parks can often be in the past. And that's everything from outreach programs. At the BioQuarter, we're already working with the local schools over science and teaching and skills, and it's really, and how do we increase that? And that will be a really important part of our procurement exercise, to demonstrate that what your plans are, how you're going to approach that, but also what evidence and experience do you have in that as well over the past couple of years.
Okay, great. Alistair, from your point of view, and also I just want to put in one quick one as well, which is there was a question that I just noticed had come through on the chat that I'd missed, which was, do you think there's going to be more onshoring potential for AMIDS going forward, coming out of the crisis? We've discussed it on in logistics, and actually that would be a conversation that I could have for an entire hour, but sadly we've only got 30 seconds, Alistair. So
indeed, and I'll be very quick, Richard. Yes, I think is the answer in terms of onshoring. I think there's got to be a real prospect for more activity in that area, but I guess time will tell us as companies start to make strategic decisions about their global footprint. I mean, I think in terms of the JV that you mentioned for ourselves, AMIDS, we'll have obviously all the details in the PIN notice, which will be published this summer, that I referred to. But essentially what we're looking for is experience. We're looking for somebody who's done this before or something similar before.
Alistair's just disappeared for a second. While that's happening, Kat, maybe there was a point then about risk matching and things like that. Why don't we pick that up with you, and we'll come back to Alistair when he returns.
Sure. I think this is one of the areas that's going to be really interesting for the Scottish National Investment Bank. We are expecting that to launch late Q3 or early Q4 this year. Essentially, what they will be able to do is to come in and support the actual development phase and the actual build phase, whether that is sort of underlying enabling infrastructure, or whether it's just a different form of risk equity capital. And although that's on commercial terms, it's not done on a commercial risk basis. So I think that's one of the areas where we can definitely support.
Okay, great. And Alistair, just give me 10 seconds, because you dropped out at that point, and then I'll hand back to Catherine.
No, I was finishing up anyway. I don't know where you lost me, but I mean, essentially, I was just saying that, you know, everything we do in AMIDS and everything since the beginning, since the outset at sort of 2014, has been done through that local lens in terms of being for local people. So our interest here is in creating jobs that will be for people within the city region, primarily to access, and will take them onto a different level of career opportunity.
Great, thanks very much. And thank you to everybody for all of your questions and engagement. Very interesting topics, and thanks from me anyway for the speakers and for sharing your views, and also to Real Asset Live for organising. Back to you, Catherine.
Great, thank you, Richard. Just to add my thanks to all of you for taking part, and for those of you watching, thanks for your interaction. It's been some really good conversation and a great opportunity up here in Scotland for the Right Delivery Partners. So we'll look forward to how that is brought forward. We're off to Waltham Forest now. And the great thing about this virtual world is that we don't need face masks to commute. We can literally log off and log straight back on, go to the Real Estate Live website, and you'll be able to log back in to the Waltham Forest, invest in Waltham Forest opportunity. And then after that, we'll be heading on to Kingston, where with the partnership of Kingston University, we'll be talking about the importance of education in placemaking, in skills, and how that works post COVID-19. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thanks again to all of our panelists, and we look forward to seeing you shortly. Thank you.